game-changing discussions on the big ideas that shape our thinking. This is One2One.
Nigeria's foreign policy is critical to the positioning of its interest on issues of domestic and global relevance. Ademola Oshodi is Senior Special Assistant to the President on Foreign Affairs and Protocol. He's a graduate of history and holds a master's degree in international relations from the University of Kent. I'm pleased to have him on the show today. Ademola Oshodi, welcome to One2One.
Thank you very much, Tokunbo. Thank you. Nice seeing you again.
Good to see you. So let's talk about foreign policy priorities and initiatives in this current government. I'm going to read you something that you've written quite extensively. I had quite a good time reading some of your articles. You've written, Nigeria is moving from passive participation to proactive positioning. We are no longer content to be the giant that slumbers. We are becoming the giant that leads. So I'm going to ask you, therefore, what are the key priorities for Nigeria's foreign policy under President Tinubu's administration? How do you see the country engaging with the global community? I know you're going to get there, so I volunteer to advance. Nigeria first. What precisely does that mean?
Diplomacy is hinged on 4 Ds. I hope I can remember them all. Diaspora, development, democracy, and demography, that's it. So those are 4 areas, quite broad topics, but that's where the focus is on, at least on the theoretical point of view. I think reality, my own point of view, is our diplomacy is focused, firstly, especially with the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is economic development, basically investments. He's restructured the Nigerian economy, subsidies, removal, Naira, been merged into one conversion rate, and also issues of subsidies of electricity have been removed in phases. And, so there's more of a liberal, open economy that's less government intervention, so let the free market principles, work. So his domestic policy, taken with so much vigor, so much audacity, is where his foreign policy is. He is the key diplomat for Nigeria. He's the ambassador. He's brought in a lot of investments through his travel. He's brought in a lot of security attention towards, Nigeria and its borders. He's also brought in a lot of healthcare and I can't remember the technological aid towards Nigeria and issues around that. So that's foreign policy in reality. His next focus is ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West Africa, I believe, where our neighbors are, our sister countries. Many of these countries have left ECOWAS. I think 3 of them, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. Yeah. They're key to Nigeria's security, Nigeria's prosperity. Those countries have a lot of militants fighting the governments, each of the governments there, and also they represent a non-democratic system, military rule. It is not good for us. It's not good for Nigeria. We don't want to go down that path. We need democracy. Democracy provides development. It's part of those 4 Ds I talked about. Yeah. It's important, it's essential that those countries go back the path of democracy. It allows foreign partners to work with them, to deal with them, and it gives them legitimacy when the people's views are represented. You have a lot of propaganda going on social media about, leaders in Burkina Faso doing great things and everything. The situation in these countries are rather dire. Security challenges are huge. President Tinubu sees ECOWAS as a pivotal part of his foreign policy, and it's important he focuses a lot of that.
I'm sure, and Ademola, that's a very, very important and detailed agenda you've just laid out. But I want to return again to Nigeria first. Of course, the heartbeat of foreign policy has got to be the national interest.
It is.
Is it not? It does. So there are those who would say, of course, that is entirely intuitive or to be totally expected. What's different? Previous organizations, previous administrations have perhaps said and pursued the same agenda. What's different now?
I think now a lot of it is ensuring that domestic agenda is successful. That's, as I say, politics is local. You need to make sure home is fine before pursuing it. And if you do pursue foreign policy, it has to ensure that what will bring economic and security stability to the country is paramount. I'll tell you that Nigerian first, being our national interest, is not just the domestic agenda. It's also foreign. We, in the days of the 70s and 80s, Nigeria pursued a very idealistic foreign policy. We fought for freedom in Mozambique, South Africa, Namibia, Angola. We have the medals to show for it. We succeeded in many ways. And I think Nigerian policy has shifted away from that. It's more pragmatical. It's more tangible. We need to think, how do we prosper our economy? How do we keep our people safe? Fighting on supporting independence around the African continent. Though all African countries are free of colonial chains, how does that in many ways bring bread and butter on our table? There are crises in Africa. We have issues in Sudan, one of the world biggest crisis right now, bigger than what's happening in Israel and Gaza. People forget the slaughter in Sudan. It's crazy. And there's also issues in DRC Congo, which is a bit subsided now with the Americans intervening. And we have issues a bit around the Central African Republic. We have crises a bit of course, in the Sahel, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. With militants, the Tuaregs fighting for independence, militants, Al-Qaeda related groups. Nigeria could easily take a very forward approach towards this and go to the United Nations and fight for each of these issues, and say we're championing our fellow brothers and sisters,
as we have done in the past.
Ultimately, it benefits us, but in the short and medium term, I'm not sure it will. We need to ensure that the Nigerian person is better off than it was years ago. We need to put structures in place. So once we're strong, able, we'll be a shining light, a mirror for many African countries. Like when these three Sahel countries left ECOWAS, people was like, oh, they're not going to come back. They will never come back to ECOWAS. They've created their own association of Sahel states. And I said, they will come back. And I'll tell you why they'll come back. Because all we need is existing West African countries, ECOWAS countries, Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, Gambia, a lot of them are English-speaking countries, and the rest French, Togo, Benin. And all of them we need is for them to have a semblance of good governance, or even have good governance, good democratic process, good levels of accountability, right of speech, good freedom of speech, strong judiciary, having stronger institutions. It's not an easy thing, it's not a one-day thing, but we are already on that path. And as much as a military ruler may throw out propaganda around the world on LinkedIn or Twitter saying that they're the best things in sliced bread, the people there would know the truth. They would yearn for what's happening down in Nigeria. They would yearn for the system in Ghana. They would yearn for the freedom, seeing their leaders going on world stages and making speeches and being accepted. They will yearn for international development. They will yearn for freedom of speech. They will yearn for an opportunity to vote. That's something they will look at, and they will say, you know what, we're tired of military rule. We want to elect our own leaders. So they will then, in many ways, create some sort of need, some sort of urgency with their people, with their leaders, and they will yearn for a democratic setting. And any democratic setting, free democratic setting, will definitely involve ECOWAS, because ECOWAS is the mother of all the countries in West Africa. It's been there for 50 years. We're just celebrating 50 years of ECOWAS, and ECOWAS has been the most successful regional body in Africa. ECOWAS fought for democracy and for the well-being of West African countries. Nigeria led it. In Liberia, in Sierra Leone, in places of Gambia, we died for these things. So it's necessary for their own prosperity and for their security to be part of this whole group. And I'm quite certain in a few time to come, they will see that retrace their steps and come back. You have a gun, you can do whatever you want, but eventually that gun will be too heavy for you, and you would have to put it down one way or the other. Whether you become you take up a uniform and seek votes, seek elections to come in as a legitimate leader, or you get removed one way or the other. But that gun will be too heavy, and the people will ask you questions.
I want to press in on one of the points that you've already made. There are a number of themes evolving through the course of this conversation already. The thrust of Nigeria's foreign policy is the national interest.
It is.
Absolutely, it has to be. What's new about Nigeria First, there's an ideological shift that is perhaps far more pragmatic than we have been in previous years. We're thinking about our own interests. At the same time, we're balancing that with the responsibility that we owe to the region and globally. But I want to talk a bit more about economic diplomacy. We've established, of course, you said it in this conversation, all politics is local.
It is.
And perhaps all foreign policy is also local.
It is.
I believe it was James Carville in the Clinton presidential election run in '93 that said, "Is the economy stupid?"
It is. It is.
Yes?
It is.
So tell me, how does Nigeria's foreign affairs strategy aim to boost economic growth and development? At home, what specific initiatives are being pursued? I'd like you to be very specific.
Well, I'm not an economist, but I've touched on it a bit. A lot of it is ensuring we have the right mechanism in place, the stability of our currency. It used to fluctuate. We had various rates. We had the various conversions. We had one for the manufacturers. We had one for business. We had one for black market. So we had almost 3 different currency valuation of the Nigerian naira prior to the emergence of the President Tokunbo. So he removed all those. We now have basically just one clear value of the naira. I mean, I think maybe the CBN zone may be slightly off, but everything is relatively close to what you may get at the black market. So that's good. So an investor, a businessman will know this is the exchange rate. This is what I will get for my buck. And it will know that the next day or 2, 3, 4 days, 1 week, 1 month, 2 years, the rates will not jump up dramatically. It's been relatively stable for the past few months now. So that's good. That's investment confidence. That's what President Tinubu has done by removing all those multiple exchange rates for the naira. He's also ensured that these subsidies we are enjoying in Nigeria, again, petroleum, electricity, in some cases, even, the telecom industry, so a lot of these subsidies are either completely removed or gradually being removed. It's important to have an open economy where investors can say, okay, you know what, I'm not competing against government. So why would you set up a electrical house, or basically a system whereby you can generate electricity as a businessman for the community, when you know the government is going to subsidize or the government is not going to pay, and vice versa for all the areas of the economy. So it's important they know that it's a free market opportunity. And with free market, the prices may start up very high, but with competition, prices will come down. And that's how it has been around the world. So that's what the government has done towards the Nigerian economy in providing that stability. Yes.
And Ademola, I'm very grateful for your many articles and all the things that you've written over the years. I had a very, very good time actually reading through them. So I'm going to read you something else that you wrote. Okay. And you wrote this as we were entering the final stages of the American election.
Yes.
Okay. And you said foreign relations during Trump's first presidency was transactional.
Yes.
Nigeria may benefit from this. If Nigeria aligns with US economic interests, it could see increased trade or investments in sectors like oil and gas. Also, Trump has a record of providing military and counter-terrorism support to Nigeria, which could help improve West Africa's regional security. I have two questions flowing from that. Okay, we are post-election now. We have a President Trump in place. One, have you found it so, as you predicted or you hoped? Okay, and secondly, what steps is Nigeria taking to strengthen bilateral and multilateral relations with other countries, including the US and other international organizations?
Okay. I think nothing's changed really from the question regarding Trump's position being transactional. He obviously sees everything based on American interest, America first.
America first, Nigeria first?
Absolutely. So it's anything else is secondary, whether human rights, democracy, whatever. It's really more, how does it benefit America? And his Secretary of State, Mario, said the same thing, that how does it benefit the United States? So Nigeria itself, I don't think is noticed much our role yet in Africa. It's more, I think the President of America is concerned about issues in the Middle East, issues with China, and of course, the Russian-Ukraine crisis. Again, a transactional president, not too concerned about crisis around anything else that doesn't concern America's interest. But he will meet with Nigeria. He has to. You cannot look at Africa and ignore Nigeria. It's a giant of Africa.
No longer slumbering.
No longer. I don't even think it ever slumbered, but we just had our issues. But President Trump has his issues with South Africa, cultural issue with the Afrikaans, and Elon Musk being a South African immigrant. That's quite different. Nigeria doesn't get into his face because Nigeria is a non-aligned country. We don't much follow the Americans or the East or the Chinese or the Russians or the European. We look at where our interest lies. I've always looked at India and said this is where Nigeria should emulate economically and politically. India is also a very diverse country. They have a very basic economy that is growing rapidly. They have systems in place that makes them quite self-sufficient. They have a massive population. They have an enduring democracy. They have a lot of comparisons to Nigeria. And India is not aligned. India would trade with Russia today, America tomorrow, put things in place to check China, and also find ways to work with Africa and Brazil, especially in the BRICS. I've always believed Nigeria should emulate India in so many aspects. And I wrote on that. But the second question, remind me on.
Yeah, what are we doing to broaden those bilateral, multilateral relations with other countries, including the US?
Absolutely. And that's why, again, India is a big part. The Indian Prime Minister came here at a state visit in Nigeria. Nigeria has been to India regarding the BRICS membership. Nigeria has also has close ties with China.
Yeah.
There's a trade agreement whereby I think about 2 billion Chinese yuan is given to the Nigerian economy, a businessman, to be able to trade with. Regardless, you don't have to go through the US dollar transaction to do that. So it's key. There's another big country, which is Brazil. Nigeria, and the president of Nigeria and the president of Brazil, Lula da Silva, are relatively close. They like each other, they meet each other in the corridors of in conferences. So it's important that we trade and keep an eye on those big evolving democracies and emerging economies. It's very key, because we can easily look at their challenges and in many ways learn from them, especially India and China and Brazil. We also do forget the soft power aspect of Nigeria. Nigeria has a tremendous amount of cultural wealth. We are in our Nollywood, in our music, in our, in many cases, our athletes, culture. When I was lecturing, I did a bit of teaching in England and the University of London when I was doing my PhD. I think the class was referred to as something on democracy and how civil society was fighting for democracy and during military rule in Nigeria. And my subtopic was Fela Aníkúlápó Kuti. Honestly, that class was filled up. You could see all the, all the West European students that came in to hear me speak about Fela's role in fighting for democracy in Nigeria, fighting the system in Nigeria. And I knew we were onto something. Like, this is a big, iconic figure in Nigeria. I don't think Nigeria has really valued him enough or showcased him enough. We think a lot about the negative aspect of Fela, his cannabis use, and cannabis is even more acceptable now in society around the world. And we think about that. We don't think about the risk, the boldness he took in challenging the system, fighting military rule, fighting for democracy, in many cases even dying for it. So we could use him as an expression of goodwill. We could showcase him in our embassies. We could promote his cultural events around the world. It gives people that good feeling about Nigeria. When you have a good feeling about a country, you tend to want to visit that country. You tend to want to invest in that country. You see positive thing about that country. It's just like Bob Marley and Jamaica. You think about Jamaica, oh, Bob Marley, I want to go see Bob Marley. I want to be in that realm of Bob Marley's music, reggae, culture. We can do a little bit of that with Fela. We do a little bit of that with our writers, Chinua Achebe, Wole Soyinka, but also our Nollywood. Our Nollywood is big. You go to Ethiopia, you go to Brazil, you go to Indonesia, you hear about people like Wizkid, Davido, you hear about Burna Boy. You don't hear much about my guy, One Day Cold.
Your guy.
Yeah, but he's coming. So, so it's important that we deliberately promote those people. It's not like it's not a tourist factor. It's just more of a feel-good aspect. People think good about your country. People will, would ask more about your country. People will think positively. People will want to visit. People would want to invest. You understand? There's still also the technical aid corps with the Nigerian government deliberately providing technical assistance to many West African countries and Africa, even Caribbean countries also. Doctors, engineers, teachers, nurses. That's also there. And that's, I think, what should be a deliberate effort by the Nigerian government to showcase.
Okay, so very interesting question here. I'd like to talk about Kemi Badenoch.
Okay.
Of course, Conservative MP.
Opposition leader.
Opposition leader, absolutely, more correctly put. In order, of course, for any party in British politics to be electable at this point, there needs to be a slightly more rightward shift, doesn't there? So she's spoken quite a lot about migration figures and immigration. And one could argue, of course, that is the, in the British context, the politically expedient thing to do now. Even the Right Honourable Keir Starmer has said and done the same. However, of course, in the process of doing that, she stepped on a few toes back home, hasn't she?
She has.
She has, yeah. Talk to me about how we've handled that in government in this country, and what impact, if any, it's had, and how do we intend to deal with the leader of the opposition going forward?
Well, I think when she first won the leadership of the opposition, the Nigerian government congratulated her, the Nigerian community congratulated her, and I think that's it officially. If, she's somebody of Nigerian descent, and we all wish her well. But I think a lot of people outside government have also, been rather upset with her views on being Nigeria roots, about Nigeria, and it looked as if she was putting down the country, and it was rather upsetting, even for me. But I'm smart enough to know that she's a politician. She wants to win the vote. She has to identify with a certain ideology, which is being right-wing, and to ensure she captured that space away from Nigel Farage and the Reform Party. Yes. So it is pure politics, and it's hurtful politics, but it's politics. And if she doesn't show or play that identity politics, she may actually not last long as an opposition leader. But the process in which she brings down her roots and casts aspersions on Nigeria is rather unfortunate. And it's Nigeria will be here longer than anybody. Anybody that says good or bad about the country, it would be here. It would grow, it would become a giant in the world, global space, because it's bound to. Its population is massive, the intellectual force is great, and it's also well positioned with human resources and natural resources to be a great country. We just need to have the right things in place, the right leadership, and and ensure that we stick to the path. So people say negative things about the country, even going beyond the opposition leader of the Conservative Party of the UK it's just temporary. Yeah. And a lot of people do it just for political gains. Absolutely. And I think that's where she fits in that too. Yeah. So, yeah.
Nigeria will be here, regardless of who is climbing up or rolling down the greasy pole in British politics.
Absolutely. Greasy pole.
Yes, really, the greasy pole. You know what they say, all political careers end in failure. Ultimately,
yeah, absolutely. And I don't think she's doing well in the opinion polls anyway. So it's unfortunate, but again, it's politics.
Yeah. She's making a fist of it, but we wish her well. Yeah. Okay. So two history and foreign policy buffs talking. It's been a most enjoyable conversation. Ademola Oshodi, thank you for joining us on One2One.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.